Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Monday, June 1st. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me. What's going on, Rick?
What's up?
Today we are going to do this is an extra episode. We don't usually record on Monday, but we are going to do a question and answer thanks to the Fantasy Football Discord chat. So we are going to do some questions and answers on that Discord for you guys and answer the Discord questions. Before we do that, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FFChamps, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. You can like us at facebook.com/the Fantasy Champions. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and leave a review. Share this podcast with your friends. We also wanted to remind you that today we launched our draft guide pre-orders, which are $25. Our launch date for the draft guide is July 1st, and it has full rankings, breakouts, busts, player draft values, player breakdowns, and so much more. Be sure to purchase that before the price goes up in July.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said in the last show, a lot of work went into this, and continues to go into it. So I hope people appreciate it, and I think it's definitely worth a buy for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the questions because we're here for the Fantasy Football Discord chat. And we'll start with one of the first questions, I guess, that started right off from Gurnals. It says, do you believe DJ Moore will have a huge year, and is it worth picking him in the top 30?
Do you want me to go first or you?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say yes. I think he's worth getting picked in the top 30. If you look at ADPs right now, like on Fantasy Pros, that range, you have like Juju Smith-Schuster, Patrick Mahomes, Todd Girlie right now, Allen Robinson, Odell. I think he's in that range. I definitely think he's worth the top 30. Okay. You look at how Teddy Bridgewater had Michael Thomas last year, and how he kind of fed the beast to a star wide receiver.
Yeah.
I think DJ Moore can do that as well this year. He had some great weeks last year with Kyle Allen as his quarterback. And I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is an insane quarterback, but I think he's an upgrade over Kyle Allen. So yeah, I do think, to answer your question, DJ Moore is definitely worth a top 30.
So, I mean, pick. I would say he's definitely worth a top 30 pick. I think there are other guys, like if you're talking about the Chris Godwin jump that we saw last year, where he ended up being like a top 3 wide receiver in half PPR.
Right, yeah.
I don't think DJ Moore can do that, but it's definitely possible for him to end up, I would say, somewhere in the top 6.
Sure.
Teddy Bridgewater
wide receiver 1.
Say that again?
I'm just saying low end wide receiver 1.
Oh yeah, definitely low end wide receiver 1. But I think last year what you saw with Teddy Bridgewater, the second Bridgewater took over in New Orleans, I thought that Michael Thomas was going to take a nosedive, and he didn't end up doing that. He actually went on a streak of 20-plus point games during that time. So I think it's definitely possible for DJ Moore to have a huge year. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen, I guess. Let's move on to the next question. Tart says, which rookie wide receiver will be relevant for 2020 redraft, if any? Rookie wide receiver.
This is a good question. I love this question. So
can I say none? Am I allowed to say none?
You are definitely allowed to say none. Especially if it is like a 10-team league. You're probably not going to see any rookie wide receivers that are really relevant this year. Last year, was kind of an anomaly. Like usually rookie wide receivers don't do much. And even then, there wasn't, like, Terry McLaurin was okay for some weeks. DK Metcalf, obviously. But there was no rookie wide receiver that was really, really stood out fantasy-wise in a redraft year. This year, I think it's going to be the same thing. I think CeeDee Lamb's going to get some decent action. Somebody who not a lot of people are talking about that I like for a rookie. I don't know if he's going to be worth a pick in a redraft league, maybe a really, really deep league. I think Denzel Mims is going to have a good season. I think he's the only guy in that offense behind Jameson Crowder for weapons-wise. There's not a lot of.
You love Denzel Mims on the Jets.
I do. I mean, I love Sam Darnold, so it's partly partly due to that, but
Yeah.
it's just not a lot of like Robbie Anderson is gone.
Yeah.
They did bring in Rashard Perriman, who I think will be good, but I don't think he's gonna take a lot of work. So I think Mims, like he could be someone underrated, goes under the radar, gets a lot of targets. But I would say no rookie wide receiver is really gonna be worth a draft pick in a redraft for this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. I would normally say it's all about landing spot, but then last year Terry McLaurin was just a beast and a freaking awful offense. So I really don't know how to answer that question. If I'm gonna play the best landing spot scenario, I'd probably say CeeDee Lamb. But there is a lot of weapons in that offense, and it doesn't really lend to a good situation for him to get a lot of opportunity. At least year one. A lot of people are in love with Michael Gallup right now. I haven't really decided on him, and I haven't done my.
I like Michael Gallup.
I haven't done my projections yet for the Cowboys, but I actually agree with you. Denzel Mims might have an opportunity. The Jets don't have a great offense; they have a good offense. But I think there's an opportunity for him to get a significant amount of targets and have success. And he's not a name like last year. I came into the season, I was actually like, who is Terry McLaurin? You know what I mean? Like I knew who he was, but I didn't think he was going to have as good
not a
rookie season that he did.
I would say Jalen Reagor too is another guy who I think could have under the radar really good rookie season.
All right, sounds good. The Rams fan, he's asking. I see a lot of talk about the big three tight ends this season: Kittel, Kelce, and Andrews. Do you think Ertz is still in that group? If not, why do you think he falls out?
This one's a good one. You want to go first?
Yeah. Why isn't Derek Waller in that, Rams fan? Darren Waller. Waller's my guy.
Yeah.
I definitely think Ertz has an opportunity to be in that group. I think last year was just a very bad year for the Eagles. They lost so many receivers. Didn't Ertz have injury problems or not? I don't remember.
Zach Ertz?
Yeah. He didn't get hurt.
I think he might have. I'll look it up.
But I think Zach Ertz and a more improved offense has an opportunity to improve and get back to what he did 2 years ago, I should say, as a top 3 tight end. I think he can do that. But it's just a matter of if the Eagles are good or bad. Last year, their offense just wasn't that. It was okay, but it wasn't great, and they didn't get Ertz in enough opportunities to score touchdowns. And that's, for most tight ends, that's what it's about, scoring touchdowns.
Right.
But that's why I like Waller. Doesn't score touchdowns and still ends up in the top 3 of tight ends.
Right. See, for me, my top tier is like Kittel and Kelce. And then there is a drop-off with Andrews and Ertz. So I kind of have Ertz in that same category. It's not really a top 3 for me. It's more of a top 2. I mean, Ertz, I do think last year was kind of just bad luck in some situations. His catch percentage was also pretty low, considering the last few seasons he's been above 67% last year to 65% catch percentage. So I think that could go up. It didn't help, too, that, like you said, there was a lot of injuries. So there was times last year where Zach Ertz was getting double teamed. There was defenses just focusing on Zach Ertz a lot last year. I think that could definitely change with a healthy Deshaun Jackson and Jalen Reagor in the mix. But I don't know. The ceiling for Zach Ertz is kind of limited with Dallas Goedert kind of emerging last year. Right. And he's turning 30 years old. It's kind of getting old for a tight end. Mm-hmm. We saw Gronk, although Gronk had a worse injury history than Zach Ertz. Yep. Gronk kind of slowly fell off the map when he was fantasy-wise around this age too. So, I like Zach Ertz, especially where he's going. Mm-hmm. I think he's fine as the 4th tight end, but I'm just not going to put him in the same class as a Kittel or Kelce right now. Okay. I'm going to ask these. There's 2 questions, and I guess you could follow them in subsequent order. So I'm going to say, Tart asks, does Lamar repeat as QB1 in all of fantasy this year? I don't know. I haven't decided yet. So for me, I'm saying yes if healthy. Okay. All right. So the thing with Lamar is, when I did my projections, I was kind of like, okay, I know Lamar's not going to throw 36 touchdowns again. Yeah. I took that into account. I lowered a lot of his stats, and he still ended up being the top wide receiver the top quarterback by about let's see, it's close between him and Mahomes, but I do have him with a 10-point edge over Mahomes. It's his ability to run the football.
Yeah.
Which is just like in fantasy, when your quarterback can run the football like that and still throw for a decent amount of yards and touchdowns, it's hard to see him not having in another elite season unless he gets hurt, which is a big F for somebody like Lamar who runs around the field a lot.
Yeah.
And he's not exactly built like Mark Ingram, or he's a skinny guy. So, the chances of him getting a leg injury do scare me. But if he stays healthy, it's hard for me not to see Lamar finishing number one unless Mahomes just has another 45, 50 touchdown season passing the football like he did a few 2 years ago and won MVP. Barring that, I think Lamar finishes number one again.
I think the hardest part about it is that when you sit there, you go, okay, for me, I always look at the QB1. Last year, I didn't think that Patrick Mahomes was going to finish as the QB1 in all of fantasy again, the number one quarterback in fantasy.
It's hard for a quarterback to repeat.
Hard for him to. It doesn't happen. It rarely happened. It's really happened in the history of fantasy football. So it's say a guy is going to do it is stepping out of the box, and I felt like I was stepping out of the box saying Mahomes wasn't going to do it last year. And he didn't. But I'm not saying Lamar's not going to do that. It's hard for me because history says they don't repeat. But Lamar says, I got my feet. So I think for me, it's kind of it's hard to say that he's not, because as soon as you sit down and you start doing projections for Lamar Jackson, you're like, oh, he's definitely going to regress in the passing touchdown category. He's definitely going to regress. And they were way too efficient passing the football last year. So they're definitely going to regress in the passing yardage area. And you can take those out, and he's still absurd.
Yeah.
If he regresses rushing yards, he's still going to be a top 3 quarterback. So it's feasible for him to finish as the QB1 back-to-back years, barring injury. But I don't think it happens. I think he ends up the second or third guy. But I'm following my trend, I guess. Let's move into the next question. Samuel L. Jackson is his name on Discord. I like that.
Celebrity.
Yeah. He says, what is the earliest you would take a quarterback such as Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, or Dak Prescott? Or are you mostly looking to grab some of the latter round QBs?
Yeah. So the way we usually draft, we typically like to take guys later. You especially.
I also want to note Samuel L. Jackson's not even listening right now.
Really?
Yeah. Come on, Samuel L.
Pop
Jackson.
the question and then left. Fair enough. But to answer the question, we usually like to take quarterbacks a little later. My strategy is usually take somebody with upside late in the draft, and then the 11th, somewhere in around the 11th round, I usually take somebody who I know is going to be at least a top 12 fantasy quarterback, maybe top 10.
Okay.
So I try to get a veteran who I know is going to be stable, and then somebody who could potentially break out. Last year I took Josh Allen, it was between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Of course, I took Josh Allen. And then the year before that, I took Mahomes, and it worked out. But
yeah.
So Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, or Dak.
So what are you trying to say? You have a good track record? Is that?
I do when it comes to the quarterbacks. Not everything else always is perfect, but quarterbacks I feel like usually I'm pretty good at. The thing I love Dak, just the amount that the Cowboys throw the football, and with Mike McCarthy as the coach. To me, what round though? They would have to fall. They would have to fall.
All three of them, really.
Yeah, for all three guys, I think in order it would be Dak, Russ, and then Kyler. Right now for me, but they would have to fall a full round about a full round from their ADP for me to do it. Dak would definitely be the one guy though who, if he's still on the board and it's past his ADP, and maybe I don't know how many teams you're in, but past his ADP significant, a full round, I would definitely pull the trigger on Dak.
To answer, I guess, the first part of the question, because I always go later round on the quarterback. Always.
You do, yeah.
I'd rather stream than pick a quarterback.
Yeah.
If I'm in a 1 QB league, 4-point touchdown, I always take quarterbacks in the later rounds. It's not necessary to, if you're in a 2 quarterback league or a super flex league or a 6-point touchdown for quarterback lead, or maybe you're all 3. I just don't.
You definitely need a quarterback.
You definitely need to draft a quarterback early, but most standard formats have quarterbacks 4-point touchdowns and only 1 per league. So for me, it's just not worth the draft capital when you could get. I mean, last year I got Dak and Ryan Tannehill off the waiver wire, and I just tag teamed it with them for most of my season.
You did great.
So for me, Dak, I wouldn't at Kyler Murray's ADP, I wouldn't draft him. At Russell Wilson's ADP, his offense is way too efficient. And it at some point the efficiency is going to drop off. So I don't really like Russell Wilson either this year, and that's a hot take for a lot of people for some reason. But anyway,
hot take for me.
Dak Prescott's the one I'm confused about, not because I have some kind of weird fetish with the Dallas Cowboys, but
every year you draft a Cowboys player.
Every year. But I think Dak, the problem is he had a really good year. So for me, I expect regression. But then they added, CeeDee Lamb. They have Michael Gallup. They have Amari Cooper. Zeke's still there. Tony Pollard had a really good season. So it's like their offensive line is still good. Like that team is still very good. So it's like, at least the offense is very good. So Dak is, he's in a position to have another really good season. But what makes us think that he's going to do that? And then Mike McCarthy's teams, when he had Rodgers, always were ridiculous. So it's like, is Dak going to not play like Rodgers but have that same opportunity? I could see Dak having a great year, but I could also see Dak completely regressing, and it's so confusing that I almost want to avoid him too. I would say draft a quarterback in the later rounds.
I would too, though.
And stick with that.
Yeah. I mean, that would be my go-to unless, like I said, I'm a big Dak fan, so I would take Dak if he fell to you.
Okay.
And drops it in the ADP. But overall, I would agree with you to wait. If you're in a standard league, like you were saying, a 4-point touchdown league for quarterbacks.
Yep.
Wait until the later rounds to get your guy.
So to finish his question, because it felt like it was like 6 questions in one, but just really quickly, who do you want in the later rounds? Give me guy. I don't know if this is already a question in there, but give me a guy that you think is going to have a Lamar Mahomes season.
A sleeper year? Yeah. So, I think some of the guys, like a lot of people talk about Daniel Jones. I think he definitely would probably fit that bill as somebody who's a sleeper who could break out. I mean, we look at year 2 guys, Mahomes and Lamar were both in their second year starters. At least. So
you look at all the second year guys. Is that what you're doing?
Not always.
Because you love Darnold.
A young guy. Darnold, yeah, but Darnold's in his 3rd year, and he doesn't have quite the weaponry around him yet. One day I'll be on the Darnold train. But I would look at Daniel Jones. Some guys you could consider looking at, though, I think I mean, it sounds crazy, but Joe Burrow, just because of the weapons around him, I think because he's a rookie, he kind of has a ceiling, though. Mm-hmm. Some people like Drew Lock. Some people like Gardner Minshew. I know you're a Minshew guy. So
I was going to leave it at Gardner Minshew and not say anything else.
Look for some of those younger guys. For me, it'd probably be Daniel Jones, though.
That's the safe late round pick. I'm going to go with Gardner because my 15th overall pick my 15th round pick is not really that important to me anyway. Let's move to another question. King of Joust said, who is the last tight end you are comfortable taking in redraft this year?
Who is the last tight end?
Yeah.
Oof. In like a regular standard 10-team league?
Let's just say 12-team half PPR.
Okay, so for me, is somebody who, again, he's on the board late.
I like to be in the middle.
He's pretty much been on the board. He's been on the board in every mock draft I've done in like the last few rounds. That's TJ Hawkinson. He had a decent start to his rookie season last year. I mean, he had a great start to his rookie season. The first week he played, and I think he had 20 plus fantasy points. Mm-hmm. Then he kind of had a few drop touchdowns. It was kind of going downhill, and then Matt Stafford got hurt. With a fully healthy Matt Stafford, and I was doing my projections, and I had TJ Hawkinson at about 145 points.
Yep.
I think he's got the upside where he can be the next tight end in that conversation with Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Travis Kelce. He was a high pick. They're going to use him. He's going to be used a lot in the red zone as well, which I like a lot. And Matt Stafford was having a great year last year before he got hurt. If he plays like he did last year, I mean, I think TJ Hawkinson's going to be really good.
Okay.
The only concern is weapons around him. I mean, not weapons around him, but other guys in that offense that could take some targets. But even so, I think there's enough targets to go around.
Okay. I would probably take Mike Gesicki, but
okay.
I always do this with the Dolphins, and then they just suck.
That's a good one, though. Gesicki's a good option.
He's a very good option. For me, I think he's got a lot of the same. I don't want to say he's Gronk, but he's got some traits that look like. I'll say T.J. Hawkinson.
The big tight end.
He's a big tight end. Third year in the league. He's if let's just assume that Tua doesn't play or start next year, and it's Fitzmagic the whole entire season. I would think that Gesicki's going to have a monster year because Fitzgerald loves his tight ends. So I think he could have a really great season. He kind of fits the mold of a breakout tight end, and he's behind Devontae Parker, who's I mean, you got Albert Wilson, you got some other guys, but I think Gesicki's probably the second or third option in that offense. And if that's the case, I mean, he could have a really great season.
Gesicki kind of reminds me of Hooper. He's the kind of like
don't draft Hooper, by the way. That's extra free advice.
Yeah, we don't like Hooper. No, we don't. I do not like Hooper this year. But Hooper last year, how we were talking before the season of how he's gotten better each year. This could be a breakout year, and it ended up being a breakout year. I think Gesicki kind of fits the same mold as Austin Hooper when it comes to that.
Okay. MT only catches Saints. I'm assuming that's Michael Thomas. Was the man who asked that question about Mahomes and Lamar, who you can get for a breakout quarterback on the cheap, just so everyone knows. Dino asks, who is worth drafting? When is it worth drafting to Jonathan Taylor in redraft leagues?
Good question. This is a good one. For me, I think the Colts have already said that they're going to use both guys, right? They're going to use Marlon Mack.
Yeah.
And they're going to use Jonathan Taylor. I think Marlon Mack is still going to it's going to be split, but I think Mack might get like 20, 30 more carries than Taylor. And then I also think Nyheim Hines is going to be used in the passing game. He's kind of going to be their default passing game back. He had 60 targets last year. But Philip Rivers does love throwing to running backs. So there might be some targets left over for Jonathan Taylor. So he's still going to get some work in the passing game. But I don't think he's going to be quite as good year one as a lot of other fantasy experts. I know you love Jonathan Taylor as a football player.
Always.
So I'd be interested to hear where you would take him in the draft.
If you are a dynasty player, like most of us probably are in this chat, we're mostly redraft, by the way. But if you're a dynasty, I mean, Jonathan Taylor, you could make an argument that he should be the 101. He's talented. He's in a system that kind of works. I was thinking about this earlier today.
He should be the 101.
You think about a lot of the running backs that were drafted in this class, right? Sure. The Cam Akers, DeAndre Swifts, and Jonathan Taylors all landed on teams who have sketchy offensive systems right now. The Colts and the Lions don't have bad offenses by any means, but in 2-3 years when their quarterback leaves, what's that going to look like on Jonathan Taylor, on DeAndre Swift, even on Cam Akers, if you like that sort of thing. So
Jared Goff's contract is so big.
I know. But to answer the question about Jonathan Taylor, I see him kind of being, because Marlon Mack has had injury problems. So I don't think he's worth drafting. I think he's worth letting somebody else draft and then wait until midway point in the season and either make a sneaky offer on him if the team won't drop him, or just wait till he ends up on the waiver wire, because I think inevitably he's going to, hurt a lot of people in terms of the first half of the season. But he's a guy that, like, you remember Miles Sanders last year? It just took him all season.
Yeah.
And there was another team, I wanted Miles Sanders so bad, wanted to draft him, and another team sniped me right before my pick. And so I tried all season when the guy was like, when Miles Sanders was not playing well, all season to trade for him, and he wasn't budging. So I think Jonathan Taylor might be that same way, where it just takes all season sitting behind Marlon Mack to get an opportunity.
Right. I think he's going to be good, especially long term. Short term, again, like I'm looking at Fantasy Pros right now. They have him ranked 47. I think that's just a little high. They have him ahead of guys like James Conner, David Montgomery, Devin Singletary. I think he's a little bit below that.
Okay.
His ADP right now, I think, is 51. So I would probably say I would take him around like late 50s, early 60s. I feel like is the range. So that I would take him. So if he drops around from where he's going right now, I would take him, but I think he's going to keep moving up. He's going to be this year's David Montgomery. I got a feeling that
Jonathan Taylor.
Well,
that hurts my soul.
He might be taken like in the 3rd or 4th round.
Why? What are you saying that because I like him? Is that?
No, I mean that wasn't what it was intended for. But you can definitely look at it that way because track history. But
Tater Nanner 23. He's got a couple of questions in here, but he says, what are some wide receivers this year that I should target that could be like Chris Godwin?
Oh, so there's a couple guys that I like. I think the one in particular that me and you both love is Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley to me is just, I absolutely love him this year. And it was funny because when we first talked about him, you said you really liked him, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm like that into him, but Matt Ryan throws the ball a lot. The Atlanta Falcons throw the ball a lot. They lost to Austin Hooper, who had almost 100 targets last year. They brought in Hayden Hurst, who I don't think is going to have the same amount of target share.
Thank you for joining the Calvin Ridley train.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I might even drive this thing because I love Calvin Ridley, man. And I projected Julio to have a lot of targets this year, and I still had Calvin Ridley at 130 targets. Like, I think he's going to get work. If he gets 130 targets and he gets a lot of receiving touchdowns, which it feels like he's kind of the guy in the
I got him at 135 too.
Yeah, so if he does that, man, he's going to be really, really good. I love Calvin Ridley. I think he's going in like the 5th round in a lot of drafts right now.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, that's where Godwin went last year. I could see something similar to that happening. Now, Ridley is not going to be like fully like Godwin because Godwin finished 2nd or 3rd?
Yeah.
I think in half PPR among fantasy wide receivers. I don't know if Calvin Ridley can get that high with Julio there, but I think he's going to be a low-end wide receiver 1 for sure. And if you can get that in the 5th round, I think that's great value.
You stole mine.
Not to steal my slogan from Walmart, but
stop. You stole my guy, so now I'm going to go Deebo Samuel without hesitation.
Oh, you stole my guy. That would have been my other guy.
So Deebo, man, he was very good in the second half of the season last year. Yeah. What scares me is the season before, we saw this same kind of second half resurgence from Dante Pettis. And I was very, very excited about Pettis, and he just completely pooped himself last year and wasn't good. So that could happen with Deebo. But I think, who's their wide receiver 1 right now?
It's Deebo.
Yeah.
It is Deebo.
So Deebo Samuel is their wide receiver 1. They have a decent quarterback. And I think the big floor piece for me, for Deebo Samuel, the thing that's going to make him very valuable is that he rushes the football on a regular basis on these stupid end around plays.
3 rushing touchdowns.
He had 3 rushing touchdowns last year. And because you're in, that offense in San Francisco, they love to call crazy plays like that all the time.
Sure, yeah. End
so it's like he's going to definitely get an opportunity to do a little bit more with that rushing. You don't expect it, but I think you could totally. I haven't statted out the 49ers yet, so I can't give any projections on it. But I think he could have over 100 targets. Probably well over 100 targets, and probably come down with over 1,000 yards and probably like 5, maybe 6 receiving touchdowns. So low end wide receiver 1, probably. I don't know that he can jump into that Chris Godwin conversation, but he's definitely. I think Calvin Ridley and Deebo Samuel both could be in that conversation of the Chris Godwin like breakout this year.
Yeah, I don't know if, again, similar to Ridley, I don't know if his ceiling is that high. of what Godwin was. Godwin, I mean, it's hard to see a wide receiver you draft in the 6th round end up being a top 3 fantasy wide receiver. That usually doesn't happen. But Debo, like, I do really love Debo. He had 81 targets last year as a rookie.
Yeah.
In 15 games, and that was with Emmanuel Sanders for at least half the season. And in the first half of the season, he wasn't really getting a whole lot of targets anyway. Now he's the main guy in that offense, receiving wise, other than George Kittle. But he's the main wide receiver in that offense. They added Brandon Ayuk, but I don't think he's going to take away a lot of targets. I don't think Dante Pettis really. He's kind of was put in the doghouse by Kyle Shanahan last year. I feel like Jimmy Garoppolo's favorite go-to target. I mean, we watched it in the playoffs too. It was Deebo Samuel.
Yeah,
he had a big Super Bowl. He's kind of like the go-to guy. And now going into year 2, which we see receivers all the time with the year 2, year 3 breakout.
Yeah,
I mean, I think he's well on his way to having a good season.
Okay, sounds good. I'm stuck between. Let's do Hunter V2 _. He says, what RBs do you think are, or what do you think? What RBs do you think is a best buy in redraft leagues? Holy smokes! Sorry, Hunter, I destroyed your question.
I was like, I'm trying to make out what you're trying to say.
So, what's the best running back to buy right now in redraft leagues?
Geez, another good. I mean, so one guy I love who
just walk into Best Buy.
I won't say.
Walk into Best Buy and just peruse the running backs.
I won't say this is my answer, but I love Devin Singletary. I'll just get that out of the way. But he's not the guy. To me, I have.
Would you relax?
I mean, Miles Sanders. To me, I think we both agree is somebody who we're in love with. Kenyon Drake as well. I really like. Those guys are both going to get opportunities in decent offenses. We saw what Miles Sanders could do last year when Jordan Howard was hurt. He's going to be the only guy in that offense running the football this year. Kenyon Drake, same thing. We saw what he could do once he went to Arizona. And now they got rid of David Johnson, so it's going to be him and Chase Edmonds. And I really like Kenyon Drake this year. Somebody else.
Dude, I got to stop letting you answer first.
I'll just say one more guy.
That's my guy.
I don't want to steal it. You can still talk because I won't go into full detail about him. You can go into detail about one of these guys. I'm just mentioning a few guys that I would. Last guy I'd say is Todd Girlie.
Okay. I was about to say that as a joke.
I legitimately believe that.
Oh boy.
It's partly because of where he's going.
Yeah.
Like I don't think Todd Girlie would be. I wouldn't feel the same way if he was going in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
But I took him in the 6th round the other day in a sleeper league. I think that's just ridiculous for somebody who's going to get the amount of work that he's going to get.
I think he'll end up being a 4th rounder if I have to make a projection. I
still think that's fine in the 4th round.
I think there's other guys in the 4th round. I don't know. I feel like that's a little high, and that's from a Girlie lover.
I mean, I just love what does it for me too is the way Atlanta passes the ball. I mean, Devontae Freeman had like 70 targets last year.
Yeah.
You give Todd
Didn't he have
Gurley
like 55
targets,
catches or 53 catches or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, he had a ridiculous amount. I wish I had the exact number in front of me, but he had a lot of targets. And if Todd Gurley gets that many targets with that many receptions, to go with the 200+ carries that I think he's going to get, like, to me, he's going to be good. Like, he's going to be really solid.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to let you just run that question. We'll move on.
Okay. You didn't want to talk about Kenyon Drake?
No, I love Kenyon Drake. Toppy Skates asks, there was mention that Ron Rivera compared Terry McLaurin to DJ Moore. Do you think we could see DJ Moore type production from Terry McLaurin? And where do you see McLaurin's ADP with this news? Ron Rivera's systems kind of scare the living hell out of me at the wide receiver position. I like McLaurin a lot. Ricky has more excitement for McLaurin, so I'll let him really dive into this. But for me, I think I'm not really in love with Terry McLaurin because there's no. This is similar to when I was in love last year with Kenyon Drake on the Miami Dolphins. He was on the Miami Dolphins. Terry McLaurin's still on the Washington Redskins, and that offense still isn't good. And you have to have Dwayne Haskins take a massive leap for Terry McLaurin to have a really good season. I think he's the equivalent of DJ Moore, and I think Terry McLaurin will end up being that in the Redskins offense. He could have a great year this year. I'm not saying he's not going to, but there are concerns for me with Terry McLaurin or McLaurin, or however you say it, that
McLaurin.
People will draft him what is it? His ADP is like in the 5th, 6th round right now, I believe.
I think it's later.
Is it later?
I actually think it's later, yeah.
But I feel like he's going to be a guy that people draft and then he ends up just not being as good as you thought. But I mean, in the 6th round or later, yes, please. I'll take Terry McLaurin on my plate all day.
Right. Yeah, so that's the thing with me too. I'm kind of in the same boat with you. One of the reasons I was high, or it seemed like I was higher on Terry McLaurin than you, was just because of where he was going. It's a similar situation to Devo. It's like the year 2. He's his second year in the league. He's the main guy in that offense. And we saw flashes of Terry McLaurin being really, really good last year.
Mm-hmm.
If he's going in the 6th round, 7th round, which last time I checked he was going, but he probably will move up.
Yeah.
As it is only June. But as of right now, yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely taking Terry McLaurin in the 6th round. The Redskins are one of the only teams I haven't done my projections on. So I'm not fully on board with McLaurin yet. I want to get that out of the way before I fully jump on the train. But I mean, all the pieces are there for him. The only negative is what you said, which is the offense. And that Redskins offense, how good is it going to be?
Right.
And that is a legitimate concern.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the only guy that I feel like is going to get I think he's going to get a lot of targets. I'll say that. I think no matter what, he's going to get a good amount of targets.
Yeah, I would agree.
Will translate into at least some fantasy success.
Frosty Helix is asking the hot take questions. Is Miles Sanders overhyped?
Asking the wrong people, that one.
We are Miles Sanders truthers for the end of life.
Yeah, I'm a Miles Sanders truther big time. So I don't think he's overhyped, but I could see why people would think that. Like, I know, like, if I was not doing, if I was just still kind of the casual fantasy player I used to be,
and
I saw Miles Sanders in the 3rd round,
right?
I wouldn't draft him, would you?
If I was casual.
If you were still
probably not. If I'm like anybody else in our home league, no, I'd probably be like, what is he doing in the 3rd round?
Yeah. I'm sure some people are overhyping him.
I'm an informed fantasy football savant. I know what Miles Sanders is.
Yeah. I just, for me, the reason why I don't think he's overhyped is because that dude he's
good at football.
He is.
Straight.
Well, he is, but he's also in a perfect situation.
Yeah.
I mean, he's right now going to get involved in the passing game, right? He's going to get his targets. I don't know how many targets he had exactly last year. But it was a good amount, and he was kind of the receiving back.
Yeah.
Even when Howard was there. So he's going to get his targets. With Howard gone, he's going to get even more carries. And he is do you see anybody stealing carries away from him? He's going to be a workhorse, a true workhorse.
Yeah.
And a good offense.
Dang.
And he's a young 2nd-year player. Like, I think a lot of the checks are in the checkbox.
You couldn't convince me more than I already was, but you did anyway. Yeah, Miles Sanders is ridiculous. At football. I mean, I remember watching week 1 of the NFL season, or maybe it was week 2 or 3. I can't remember. But like we talked about earlier, Miles Sanders had this slow start to the season, and it felt like every single week it was like, okay, Jordan Howard's not here. Miles Sanders should blow up at this point. Is he gonna have a big week? And it just felt like it kept on being like this all season, waiting for the big week. Finally happened after 5 straight weeks of expecting it. But for me, when I watched film week 3, I was kind of sitting there and there was a lot of plays where there was just one ridiculous thing happening after another. And when I say ridiculous thing, I mean like he gets tripped up with like one finger, or he gets a holding call on a 40-yard run for a touchdown. And it was like, it just looked like he was so, in all the film I watched of him, it looked like he was so close to having these explosive games. And it was just stupid stuff like that overtook it. And then you also had Jordan Howard on the team, just completely stealing every single red zone rep that you could ever imagine for Miles Sanders. So for me, Jordan Howard's gone. No one else is there. Miles Sanders is the job. I think if I was going to answer your question, Frosty, I think Miles Sanders is slightly overhyped right now, and that's what makes me nervous. But, that same nervousness came with Chris Godwin last year, and I drafted him anyway, and he blew up. So,
Right,
and
yeah.
all I saw scrolling through my fantasy football Twitter page was Chris Godwin. Oh my God, Chris Godwin made a one-handed catch in practice. Chris Godwin this, Chris Godwin that. And I'm like, should I even like this guy anymore? Everyone else likes him. But sometimes
It's
they're just a
definitely,
really good player. And Miles
Right.
Sanders is that.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you on that one.
I don't know how to say your name. I think it's Tyruzi. He says, how confident are you with Drew Lock if he ends up as your team's QB1?
In a standard
I like that one too.
league, like just the regular.
Yeah, 4 point. Just assume, bro. Don't you know?
In a redraft regular, probably I'm not that confident in Drew Lock. I like his upside. Like I know, I know Colin Cowherd predicted him being an MVP.
Don't bring him into this.
Are
you trying to give us a bad name?
No. Don't. I'm using this as an example of people are
stupid,
very hyped about him, including myself. Yep. Right? I do like Drew Lock. I like the weapons that are around him that they're building. Adding Melvin Gordon, adding Jerry Jeudy, adding KJ Hamler. I think Cortland Sutton is a good receiver. So he's got the weapons.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of limited a little bit. They don't throw the ball a whole ton in that offense.
Mm-hmm.
And with Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman still on the roster, I think they're going to, try to utilize their running game. But Locke, like I really do like, especially in Dynasty,
mm-hmm.
if you're gonna kind of rely on Drew Lock in a regular redraft league, make sure you have a veteran quarterback to go with him. Kind of what I was talking about earlier. Somebody who for a fact is going to be successful when he's out there, to go with Drew Lock, because if Drew Lock breaks out, then you got, an MVP candidate. And if he stinks, good thing you drafted this veteran guy to go with him. Yeah.
I don't know about Drew Lock. He seems like I don't think he should be drafted. I'll say that. I think there's a chance he has, like, he kind of reminds me a smidge of Daniel Jones last year, where he might have some weeks where he can be a QB1 but he's not going to bring that weekly. He's going to be a streamable option. He could blow up, there's always that chance, but I mean, I haven't done a whole ton of research on Drew Lock yet. Is he a guy that likes to run all over the field?
He doesn't, he's not really a running quarterback, which is, I think, kind of my concern. I have him projected at like 150 rushing yards. So he's not
you're
like
way ahead of me, dude.
He's not like Tom Brady, where he's like not going to run the ball a lot. I mean, he's not like Tom Brady, where he's going to run the ball a little bit.
Yeah,
but he's not like Lamar Jackson either. He's not going to run all over the field.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question from Tater Nanner 23. Bringing it back with Tater Nanner. I like that name for some reason. I don't know why. Thoughts on Tyler Boyd and Juju in full point PPR this year? Am I crazy to think Juju finishes as a top 12 wide receiver this year? No, my friend, you are not crazy.
Absolutely not.
Juju is going to be a monster this year. He's going to be the monster we thought he was. Like, if week one, Big Ben, his arm just falls off his body, then Juju's going to suck.
Yeah.
But if we assume that Ben Roethlisberger is going to be good next year, at least slightly better than the trash that they had last year,
right?
I think Juju ends as a top 12 wide receiver easily. I mean, he had, with Antonio Brown on the team, he had 160 targets.
That's with the full season of Big Ben.
Yes. So what makes you think that he's not going to get 160 targets with Big Ben on the field? That's why I also like Deontay Johnson, by the way, but that's a complete other conversation. As far as the first half of your discussion, Tyler Boyd is dead.
I definitely
moment of
love
silence
Juju
for Tyler Boyd.
A lot more than Tyler Boyd. Even last year, like Juju his one game with Ben Roethlisberger, he was matched up against Stephon Gilmore, and he still had 8 or 9 targets. So he was on pace for having a good year before. Roethlisberger getting hurt just completely ruined his season, which is a good thing for this year because people are sleeping on him.
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd, I'm kind of with you. I wouldn't say he's completely dead because, I think he's still actually going to probably get the most targets in that offense.
Dude, besides AJ Green.
Well, AJ Green, just health-wise, dude, it's just so concerning. The problem with Tyler Boyd for me, though, is just it's not just AJ Green he has to worry about. When John Ross is healthy, he gets a lot of targets. They drafted T. Higgins at the top of the second round, pretty much a late first round pick. And then Joe Burrow, who I like, partly because of his running. Is he going to be good enough to feed that many mouths? Because, Joe Mixon, too, he's going to get 40, 45 catches. They use Gio Bernard in the offense. There's a lot of guys in that offense that would kind of limit Tyler Boyd. I still think he's going to be good. He could be the best fantasy wide receiver on that team. I think he probably will be, because I just don't trust AJ Green's health-wise. But I'm not, going out of my way to draft Tyler Boyd. Juju Smith-Schuster, though, I agree with you 100%.
Okay. Space Ghost Forced. I don't know why I said forced. Space Ghost Force. Says Fuller versus Brandon Cooks, both good values at their current ADPs according to you all. Who do you see emerging as the number one?
So, again, this is an if because the injuries. But I think if both guys are healthy for their full season, I'm choosing Will Fuller.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm guessing you like Brandon Cooks. So.
Yeah, dude, I love Brandon Cooks this year.
Okay, so I love Will Fuller. We saw last year. I forget what week it was, but he had the big week where he had 200.
Oh, was it 3-4 touchdowns?
Yeah, he had a monster week in there. And with Hopkins gone, it's not like Watson didn't like Fuller anyway. Fuller got a lot of targets when he was healthy in that offense. And with Hopkins gone, I think Fuller is kind of his main guy. I like Cooks, but Cooks, he's kind of gone to so many teams, and every single team he goes to, he has the same role of just being a vertical threat. And I think in this offense, Deshaun Watson usually gets out of the pocket and makes a play happen. He kind of likes having a security blanket. For years, it's been Hopkins. Yeah. I think that's going to be Will Fuller when he's healthy. That's the concern, though, is when he's healthy. But, I think Cooks is going to be fine, too. He's going to be better than what he was last year. Yeah. But I don't think he's going to be,
Brandon
either
Cooks,
of these guys are going to be Hopkins.
Brandon Cooks was a mid to high-end wide receiver, too, almost every year in his career, with the exception of last year, or years he's been hurt. So Cooks, to me, what did they spend a first-round pick on him, a second-round pick? I can't remember.
I think it was a second.
So they spent all this draft capital, if you want to say that, to acquire Brandon Cooks. He's their number one receiver. He doesn't play the same way Hopkins does, but, I think they're going to target the crap out of Cooks. And it would not surprise me if Cooks ends up being a wide receiver one next year. And because he was, he switched teams and he burned everyone last year, his ADP is not going to be, horrible when August comes around. So I think he's going to be worth a draft slot. Especially if you don't even have to start him week one. It's definitely worth the risk. I think you could say the same for Will Fuller. If you draft both guys, I wouldn't even judge you, as long as you don't start both.
I wouldn't either. There's my problem with those guys, though. I don't know. I feel like the balls can be spread a lot without Hopkins. But you say Cooks, I say Fuller. But I think either guy has good upside. If you're taking them late, don't take either of these guys too early, though.
Yeah. Frosty Helix asks, will I crash and burn with Darius Geis on my IR this season? I got to ask the same question myself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was talking to Rick the other day. He feels like he's one more injury away from being who's that running back in Houston that people loved for years? Donta Foreman.
Oh.
Donta Foreman, man. He was good, and then he got hurt, and he was dead. So, Darius Geis, he's one injury away from that happening. Him and, Jerick McKinnon's already gone the way of the dodo, but I think Darius Geis, I love Darius Geis. I think he's fantastic. I think he's very talented. I think he's in an offense that will work for him. If he's healthy for a full season, Darius Geis could be an absurd value and end up being a mid to high-end RB2 for your fantasy team, and a lot of people would buy him at that. So I like Geis. My only problem with Darius Geis is the IR question that you just asked, and I don't know. We have a writer on staff, Adam Hutchison. He's a physical therapist, so he knows a little bit about medical stuff. He'd probably be better to ask than me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to say I hope Darius Geis plays a full season. I would expect him to miss like 4 games this year.
Yeah.
If I was statting injuries. Would I draft him? Yeah.
Me too. So, but yeah, I do think he's like one injury away from being Jarrett McKinnon.
Wow. In dynasty leagues, Toppy takes or skates. I'm sorry, it's his name is upside down. In a dynasty league, would you rather have Geis or Girlie? Why?
Oh man,
I would say Geis. I mean, for the love of Pete, yeah.
I think it kind of depends on your situation. If you're in a win now mode, I would say Girlie.
Yeah.
Because I do think Girlie's going to be good for at least another year or two.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Geis, like if he can stay healthy, he's very young, and he does have kind of the saying older knees because of injuries.
Right.
But he's still like, how old is Geis? Like 23, 24? Like he's a young player. I mean, Girlie's pretty young too, but he's kind of got a lot of work, a lot of mileage on him.
Yeah.
So I'd say like if you're kind of trying to take a risk, you're kind of rebuilding, I'd say Geis. If you're in a win now situation, I'd say Todd Gurley.
Interesting. Okay. Long term, long term is definitely Geis. But
are you guys both ways?
Yeah, I think I'm Geis both ways. I'll take Geis both ways.
Geis is 22. Sorry, he turns 23 this month.
Yeah, he's young. He's I most definitely would rather have Geis over Girlie in Dynasty. Amon Call says, or he asks, would you feel comfortable spending up to get Kelce or Kittel in the second round? If not, then do you plan on drafting more than one tight end in later rounds? Interesting question. I'm going to say, for me, my strat is not to draft Travis Kelce or George Kittle in the early rounds.
Yeah.
I think Travis Kelce is an absolute lock to be the tight end 1 next year if he stays healthy.
I think Kittle could have some say in that, but
I just
1 or 2 at least. I think he's probably going to be number 1.
I feel like the value that you're going to get in return for Kelce and Kittle, is just not going to equal what the draft selection is for them. So basically what I mean by that is that Kelce and Kittle are essentially wide receivers, right? So they score the same as wide receivers. They do basically everything the same at wide receiver. They're just locked into the tight end position. So you have to ask the question of, does the value of Kelce or Kittle equal that of a wide receiver? So if a wide receiver scores 250 fantasy points and you're taking Kelce ahead of him, then you should just take that wide receiver. Right. So I feel like drafting Kelce and Kittle, you're not going to get the value back that you want. Sure, it gives you what you would think is an unfair advantage in your fantasy league, but almost every year, sometimes people win with good tight ends and drafting good tight ends. I've seen it happen before. But in most of the leagues that I play in, the team that drafts Kelce or Kittle ends up losing a lot of games.
Yeah.
So I always tend towards drafting in the later rounds. I'll usually just draft one tight end and then make my waiver wire decisions after the draft as to whether or not I want to add another one. By the way, I don't draft kickers or defenses, so that allows me a lot more flexibility, I guess, in the later rounds to take two tight ends.
Coming week 1, but
yeah, got to drop all my guys to pick up a friggin' kicker. But
I usually have 2 tight ends in my roster. I'll take a guy later. I'm in the same boat with you on this one. I don't like taking tight ends early. Sure, if Kelce or Kittle would fall to me, I think, you know, like most players, you got to take them if they fall. But I'm not trying to take one in the second round, just simply for the fact, like you said, I mean, if you take a wide receiver in the second round, you're probably going to get a lot more fantasy points than you would taking a tight end at that spot.
Okay.
Does it give you an advantage? Yes. But like you said, it's not as big as one as you would think. I mean, last year I got Austin Hooper and Mark Andrews on my team and Hunter Henry. I did not draft a single one. Week to week, those guys.
I drafted Austin Hoop. There it is in our home league.
Yeah.
In the 15th round, and then I picked up Darren Waller and dropped Austin Hooper week 1.
Another guy, yeah.
And it's and I had Mark Andrews, so I picked up all 3 guys, and it was just like, it goes to show you. Last year was a weird year for tight ends. I'll recognize that. But
you're not going to get 4 guys.
Yeah, but you can always get early in the season. there's always going to be a tight end like George Kittle or Darren Waller or Mark Andrews that you can hop on board with that didn't get drafted. And so you're going to see that this year happen. You're going to see that next year and beyond. So for me, I would not waste my pick. Yes, Kittle and Kelce are almost locks to be in the top 3 at tight ends. But I mean, it to me, it's not worth drafting those guys to get that unfair advantage when the tight end position really doesn't have, unless you have a tight end, unless you're in a tight end premium league.
Sure. So that could change things.
Kelce and Kittle don't really give you that much of an advantage. If you're in a tight end premium league, you should most definitely be drafting, high quality tight ends. But if you're just assuming that
regular league,
they're not worth it at that value. So I'm definitely going to go with drafting one or more tight ends in the later rounds. Space Ghost Forest. He says, can you all reiterate your points about David Montgomery's ADP value? But do you think Foles boosts?
What was the question?
Hold
Sorry.
on, I'm trying to read it out loud. Can you all reiterate your points about David Montgomery's ADP value? But do you think Foles boosts or lowers his value?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I saw the hyphens or the whatever you want to call them, the parentheses, and I got confused.
We both said we liked his value for where he's going.
Yep.
Which I agree. I think where he's going, considering the amount of work he's going to get, I mean his ADP right now is 62, so it's hard to see a starting running back fall you at 62. So I would definitely, I'm definitely on board with Montgomery right now for where he's going.
Monty.
I think Nick Foles could increase his value a little bit.
Okay.
I don't think it would change it too much fantasy wise though. Just because I don't think Nick Foles puts up huge numbers.
I think long term through the full season, I think you're going to start, if Foles starts, that's for one.
Sure.
If Foles starts, I could see him improving David Montgomery, but I don't think that Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky are going to affect David Montgomery's ADP.
Right. Yeah. I don't think it's going to change.
For me, I was talking to you about this, I think, on the last episode, about David Montgomery's where he's getting drafted, his ADP, on top of the fact that he's going to get 200 or 250 plus touches, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's an absurd value to me. So I'm most definitely going to, draft that at his value. But I don't think Nick Foles is going to make that big of a difference.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. I mean,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have Montgomery at over 250 touches this year. So
awesome. So we only got a couple more questions to go. Okay. Frosty Helix says, will Kamara bounce back to be an elite RB1 production that we are accustomed to seeing, or will it be more of the same in 2019? Kamara will be back.
Yep.
He will be back.
Yeah, I'm a big Alvin Kamara guy, so I think he's going to return. It's partly because last year, or 2 years ago, I should say, didn't he get like 20 touchdowns total? He had 18 touchdowns total. Last year, he had 6.
Wow.
So he played in 14 games.
I talked about that last year too. When I was at the top of one of my drafts, and I wanted Zeke, and I wanted Kamara, and I was choosing between the two of those at number 2 in my draft. And I said, there's 2 things about those 2 players that I like. I said, Zeke always gets the yards, but he never gets the touchdowns. Almost never gets the touchdowns. Kamara gets the touchdowns, but doesn't do as efficiently with yardage as Zeke does. So if Kamara has a regression in the touchdown category, then you're going to see a point drop off. And that's exactly what happened with Kamara. And I ended up taking Zeke because I was like, Zeke always scores like 6 to 8 touchdowns total on the season, right? Or maybe 6 to 10 touchdowns total on the season, but he always gets his yards. He always eats. So I was like, I'll take him and take the floor, the high floor, as opposed to, drafting Kamara, taking that risk, and then the bottom falling out at the touchdown area. I think honestly, it was probably Drew Brees not running that offense. So
sure.
I think Kamara this year is a great he's not a great value. I mean, what is he getting drafted, like 6?
Yeah,
he's not. He's like
6.
So. I mean, I don't mind. There's a lot of running backs in the first round, and I actually think Kamara can be one of those guys that jumps back into the top 3 and gets drafted at the back end of the first round.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that one. I if you're picking like 5th overall and Kamara's on the board, to me, I would definitely take him. So in 2018, he had 18 total touchdowns. Last year, he had 6, like I was saying.
Yep.
I think, you can probably see him somewhere in the middle, maybe around 12 touchdowns this year, maybe even a little bit more, because he only played 14 games last year. If he plays a full 16, I could see him getting like 12, 13 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And one thing he also fumbled 4 times last year. In his first 2 years in the NFL, he only fumbled once each year.
Right.
So I would expect that number to go down. I think it was just kind of an anomaly year for Alvin Kamara. If he kind of goes back to, like, he fumbles a little bit less and gets more touchdowns, he's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next question. Toppy Skates, another one. He asked this one twice, so I wanted to get to it. He sees a question that's coming up in trades. He says that he's getting advice of selling Dak and getting Wentz in return. I'm assuming he's in a dynasty league.
Sure. We'll
it seems like you almost always receive an extra piece when downgrading from Dak to Wentz. You put quote downgrading in parentheses or whatever. How far off do you see the values between Dak and Wentz, and what type of piece would you need in addition to Wentz? In addition to Wentz to move Dak. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I do think Dak, he's kind of fantasy-wise a little bit ahead of Carson Wentz. But honestly, like, if you can get another solid piece, I would do that in a heartbeat, because I think Wentz is also I think Wentz will probably get about 300 fantasy points this year. So it's not like Carson Wentz is...
Did you project the Eagles?
I did.
Wow.
I think Carson Wentz is going to get...
How many touchdowns do you have for him? I just want to hear it.
For Carson Wentz?
Yeah.
I got to pull it up, dog.
Don't say 40. Don't do it.
What do you think would be the other piece? It's not 40. I do not have him at 40.
I'm like, how did you score him at 300? He doesn't rush, does he?
I am at 31 touchdowns.
Okay.
Which is an upgrade from what he had last year. But I think he had 27 touchdowns last year.
To be honest with you, bro, I think it depends on your team and where you're at.
So, yeah, I was going to go there.
I mean, if you're in a good position to shoot for a chip, I would keep Dak and just draft a quarterback if you're worried about long-term plans. You can like Wentz, but trading Dak for Wentz is a massive risk. Carson Wentz had one really fantastic season, and then he tore his ACL in that season, and since then he has not been good. Now there's proof that, usually it takes 1, 2, maybe 3 years for a guy to get over, a quarterback in particular, to get over that, knee injury to get back to where he was. But he's only done it once. Dak has been good in, more than 1 year. So I would just hold on to Dak, keep him on your team, and then draft a quarterback in this year. Like, you might even be able to get an undrafted guy that could end up being good in the future. So that's assuming if you're in a dynasty league.
I would only do that trade for, like, what you said. If you're not in a position that you feel like you can win your title in dynasty, or 2, you get something really solid to go with Wentz. Because I don't think it really is a big difference between those two guys, but I do think Dak is the better fantasy quarterback. What do you think would be like? I mean, so what I would say is the additional piece would have to be a player that you can't, like, refuse. Like, you look at the deal and be like, okay, I can't pass up on Wentz and this insert player here. Or maybe like a need. Like, let's say you really need another running back and he gives you a starting quality running back to go with Carson Wentz. Yeah. I'd make that trade. Yeah. Or same thing with a wide receiver. But if you're in win now mode, unless he kind of blows you out of the water, I'd keep Dak.
Okay. We'll get to 1, maybe 2 questions. Frosty Helix says, which hyped up wide receivers will be disappointing? Will have a disappointing season similar to OBJ in 2019.
Another good question. Is I I was gonna say, is it awful to say OBJ again? I think OBJ will be good, but he's starting to move up. Like I think Fantasy Pros has him ranked 10 now. I could be wrong.
As a reminder, this is not a question about OBJ. This is
no.
Which type? Oh, okay, all right. I just thought you were going into OBJ.
I do, but I just think he's starting to get rehyped up because everybody's like, oh, he had a bad year.
Oh,
last year.
yeah.
This year.
Oh, so you're saying OBJ again? Don't do that to me.
I'm not. Listen, I like OBJ. I'd draft him. I just think people are slowly starting to hype that guy up again.
Yeah.
And I think he's got kind of a ceiling with the amount of times that the Browns throw the football.
Yeah.
And with the weapons around him. I think he'll be more efficient though. So he will be better. I don't know if I'd be willing to put him in the top 10 right now for receivers. Somebody who I think is getting a little hyped right now is Keenan Allen. I saw him going, I think, the 4th round the other day, and I know he's a great wide receiver, but with as of right now, their plan is to go with Tyrod Taylor as a starter. I mean, we saw Keenan Allen last year after the first 3 weeks of the season.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of just fell off a cliff. I think it's going to be similar to that. He'll be okay, but not worth a 4th round pick when you could get other guys like Calvin Ridley, AJ Brown or Cooper Kupp or even Adam Thielen, any one of those guys in that same area.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't know how to answer this question. I like all receivers.
I do. I really am a receiver guy.
I have to pull up the ADP at the wide receiver position real fast.
Hold who's somebody who I don't know if he's super overhyped necessarily because he's not. Because
I drafted OBJ in the 2nd round and I got slapped in the face. So whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, it firsthand. You know what? You know who I'll say? I think Mike Evans.
Okay.
Mike Evans is a little overhyped to me. He's going top of the 3rd round.
Oh, Lord have mercy. He's going off as the 8th wide receiver?
Yeah, end of the 2nd round. I think he'll be good. Again, it's hard for me. I don't know if there's going to be necessarily
I'm going to agree with you on this one.
Or Juju, where somebody really falls off after being a 2nd round pick. But Mike Evans, Brady likes the slot guy.
Yeah.
I mean, other than 2007 with Randy Moss, which was a long time ago now, it's hard for him to throw deep. I think Evans will be good, but he's not going to be at the same level as a Chris Godwin. Yeah. To me, at least. This guy isn't getting super hyped, but I'll mention I don't think T.Y. Hilton is going to be good at all this year. And he's right now ahead of DJ Chark and Stephon Diggs and DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, don't take T.Y. Hilton. I want to say he's a bust, but I feel like that's common knowledge. So
yeah, but right now Fantasy Pros has him as a 23rd receiver. So don't listen. To me, he's probably not even in my top 30 for wide receivers.
Fantastic questions, everyone. I wish we had more time to answer them and take them down, but I've already gone over my own personal limit for how long this is supposed to be. So we thank you so much for allowing us to do this, allowing to answer your questions. It's been fun, interesting, and real. Please consider going to our website, thefantasychampions.com, and it says the draft guide right at the top. Just click on that and go buy it right now.
I mean,
I'm not leaving until you buy it. So
if you guys like our advice and really want to win your league, I think it's a good investment to make. It's not a lot of money. It's got a lot of good information in there. Yeah. I think it's definitely something that if you really, really want to win your league this year, you want to have a good draft, I think it's definitely a good investment to have. Yeah, definitely. And don't forget to check out our website. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Sorry, I already mentioned the website, but yeah. You can mention it again. That's okay. thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, please. And we do have a show dropping tomorrow. We're going to talk about quarterback sleepers, tight end sleepers, wide receiver, all over the place for the next couple weeks. We'll see you tomorrow, guys. Peace out. See you tomorrow. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.